Alright guys, welcome back. List boxes are powerful tools for displaying and interacting with data, allowing users to view, select, edit, and delete entries from a designated Excel table efficiently. We'll be going through a practice problem on listbox mapping to illustrate this in depth. So, what is listbox mapping? Listbox mapping is a very simple principle whereby if I have a table on my Excel worksheet, I could map it onto the listbox control of my user form. And then I could perform a certain types of operation on the listbox, such as making amendment to the entries on the listbox, deleting entries from the listbox. And that changes should be reflected dynamically to the Excel worksheet. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this task. All right. Develop a dynamic user form in VBA that populates a list box with entries from the specified table below. Okay, from this table. Basically a table with date, product, store name, salesperson, and total sales. Okay. User should be able to edit entries by selecting an item in the list box and clicking an edit button. Right? So when I have these entries populated in the list box, I have a selection, I can click on edit, and it triggers a second user form with all the values from my entry populated into the respective field of the second user form. And the fields for the second user form comes from where? From the field from this table. So they're exactly equivalent to one another. Date, product, store name, salesperson, total sales. We have the exact same thing, right? And then this allows for amendment, which containing fields for amendment of the selected entry. So whatever that entry that I've selected, I click edit. I can make the necessary amendment on any of the fields that I chose. And then I click update. When I click update, that value should be reflected dynamically onto the Excel worksheet. Okay, so that's what we're doing. And any updates or deletion made should be synchronized with the original table, right? So updates, as I told you, right? So if I made the update, I click update, values get reflected dynamically. Delete. If I delete an entry from the list box, select an entry from the list box, I delete it. It gets deleted. Okay, so it's a very simple task. Not very simple, but it's manageable. All right, I apologize. It may be simple for those who are experienced, but may not be simple for those who are new to the concept of list boxes. But I assure you, it will be simple by the end of this video. So I'm going to insert two user form, right? Because we're going to have two user form. So I'm just going to name the first user form list form. Okay, I'm just thinking of any random, some good names that I can, relate to. And the second form, I'm just going to name it update. Okay, then we might want to change the caption as well, right? I don't want to have this generic caption list form. When I want to see something that reflects what the form is doing. List form update. And I'm going to say update form. Okay, then I also want to insert my module. If you remember, why do we insert module? Because we want to assign a procedure to be activated on the worksheet, right? We're going to have a shape and then we're going to assign the macro. So I'm just going to call it, I'm going to leave it that because we don't have to worry about that. Let's set up the form first, okay? So the first form, what do we have in the form? We have a list box, okay? So I'm just going to throw in a list box. List box is going to put a list box, is going to adjust it to some size, okay? Whatever it is, doesn't matter. You can always readjust it later on. And then I'm going to have the two buttons, if you remember. Command button, edit. Command button 2, delete. So I want to change the code name for this for sure, right? I want a name that I can relate to, edit. And the caption should be edit as well, right? Because we're editing this. Using this button to invoke the second form. The command button is the delete, where I'm going to delete entries from the list box, okay, and have it reflected dynamically onto the Excel worksheet. Okay, so I have my list box. I have the controls for the two buttons, okay, and so now what I want to do with the list form, we're going to populate the list form. But before we populate the list form, always go and check the column count. Ensure that you have the right column count, 5. Okay, so I've done I'm pretty much done with the controls for the first form. The second form is a little bit more tedious, right? Because it involves all this alignment and all that. But remember, if you have been watching my video, right, there is a shortcut and mathematical way of doing things, right? Use the left, top, and width, right? You can just do whatever. I'm just going to show you the first 1 and 2, and then I'm going to fast forward the video. So the first one was date. Okay. And then, if you don't see the toolbox, view toolbox. Okay. And then the next thing is text box. Okay. Text box. I'm just going to make it large. Doesn't matter. Okay. It can be however you want. Okay. And then I'm going to set the alignment for the left. I'm going to set it at 12. This one, I'm just going to set it at maybe 75. Okay. Then the top. Okay. We have gone through this, right? So I hope you know what I'm doing here, right? I'm just assigning the top pixels from the top. And then if you just standardize it. Okay. The second one, I can just hit control, drag down. Okay. Then control, drag down. And then if this was 30, then you can have 60, right? This one will be 60. This one will be 60 as well. The text box too. And remember, this was set at the top. The left was 75 from the left. So this one should be 75 from the left. Okay. So if this date is not exactly on the center of it, so you can just set up all the form, then you can just move shift down 5 pixels once you've done the setting up, right? So I'm going to fast forward the video. I'll see you in a moment. Alright guys, so I'm back and we have the second form set up. Okay, so we have the date, product, store name, salesperson, total sales with the text box. So I might as well just make sure that I have a name that I can recognize, because we will be transferring the values onto the second form, right? So the values from the values from the list box, right? When you hit edit, the values from the list box goes into the update, right? And so might as well assign the names now. All right, so I'm just going to name these my date. Okay, make sure you don't have a name that clashes with the object library. Don't use a name that that is too generic, that might be existing, right? So I'm just going to call this my star. Okay, my name is okay, but not name, like that could be problem. I don't know, I'm just assuming. My person. And then I have my sales. So these are all the controls in the second form, and as you can see, I've just set the alignment using the left 75 on this. This one was just 12, and the top was just 30 increment basically, right? And then I wanted this to be in the center, so basically this was 35 to just really have it right in the center. So just play around with it, okay? In the list form, there's nothing much, right? You can adjust. You can see first populate it, and then you can see how it goes, right? So if you need to adjust the size based on what you're seeing, the entries when it's being loaded. So you have 5 columns. We have done that. Now we're going to go into the list form, and we're going to start with the first thing. What is the first thing? Is we're going to populate values into the list box, okay? So for that, I'm going to use the initialize event. I'm going to go to the user form, and I'm going to go to the initialize event. Okay, I have the initialize event, and what I'm going to write here, I have to make sure that I have these two, edit and delete, initialize. Okay, just want to make sure that I have all my controls. Okay, and this control should be something that I recognize. Okay, so that when I do the delete and edit, I know which one is referring to the delete button, which one is referring to the edit button, etc. Okay, so we have done that. Okay, so I'm going to populate the list form. Remember what method we use in the combo box, the L row, and we want it to be dynamic, so we use the L row, right? And it's dynamic, so dim L row. It can be as anything number. I just use long, so this session on setting up the list form, we'll be learning a lot of some of the theories that we have learned previously, right? Like referencing continuous, non-continuous range, variable scoping, right? We'll learn a few things, right? So that's why you have to watch my video from the start, right? If you're lost somewhere along the way, okay? Because I've covered all of them in my previous videos, right? I put together a very comprehensive course, basically covering all that is required for you to embark on a career as a VBA developer. So basically, right? So I've defined the last row. Now I want to populate the list box from the worksheet. Okay. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to say me.listbox1. We have the name. Don't have to change the code name for this. We only have one list box, right? So if you have two list box, that's a different story. So I'm just going to say row source. What's the sheet name? Okay. So the value on the left is assigned to by the value on the right. Okay. That's just how structured programming works. A6, I have 5 columns, A, B, C, D, E, right? So E. Okay. Remember how to concatenate and all that. I've gone through all this. Okay. And L, row. And if you have the row source, always have this command because it's a good practice. Okay. So I've done that. Now I just want to see if the form is working. Okay, sheet 1. It should be sheet 1. Okay. All right. It should be sheet 1. All right. Now I'm gonna run the thing. Okay. See, I see the forms. I see, and it looks pretty nice, right? Maybe we can just adjust the spacing here. Right. I'll show you how to adjust the spacing. So the way we can go and adjust the spacing is we can go to the if I go to the list box, I can go to the column width. Okay. I can go to the column width, and what I can do is I can basically adjust the column width to what I might see fitting according to what the size of the columns are, right? So the first one I might put 70, second one I might just put 70 as well, 70 points, right? Or pixels, whatever, it's points, right? But points in this context is pixels, right? Maybe third one is 90, then it's 90 with the space, and then the sales amount, I think I'll just have a small value, right? It's just something that you can play around with it, right? Just play around and see if it looks good, right? So I'm gonna run the form again. Yeah, it looks much better. Okay, it looks much better. So if you want to make sure that you don't have this scroll down effect, then you can enlarge the user form, right? So the extent that it displays all the value. But I think I'm okay with this, right? I'm just gonna make this a little bit smaller, and then I'm gonna see how it looks, right? I'm happy with the way the form looks like. Okay, so there's nothing much on the form that needs to be taken care. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next section. So we have populated the list box. Now we're going to carry out some actions. The first action is the delete button. What do I want to do with the delete button? Okay, I'm just going to paste it below so that in the future, if you're referring back to the code, because I'll be sharing this workbook, you know the order we have been doing things. List index equals to me dot list box 1 dot list index. Okay, am I going to dim the list index on the delete button? No, I'm not going to dim my list index as a variable within the delete button, because I'm going to need the list index throughout this user form and also the second form, right? Because I'm transferring the value. When I'm transferring the value into the second user form, and it's being returned to the worksheet, right? It's being returned to this worksheet, right? So I have all the values here. It's being returned to the worksheet. It has to reference that list index that I've selected. Okay, so that list index is something that it has to exist throughout the form. Okay, so for that we're gonna assign this list index. I'm just gonna call it public list index as long. And while we are at this module, let's just have the sub to call the form onto the worksheet, right? So we're going to call the list frm dot show, right? This thing is basically to call the user form, right? So I'm just going to assign a shape, okay? Whatever, I use the square shape. I like the square shape, okay? And you can assign whatever shape, it doesn't matter as long as it works, okay? You have to assign the macro. And let's run the form, okay? We're seeing the form, it's good, but we're not seeing the second form because the second form will be triggered from this edit, Okay, and that's exactly what we will be doing in a while. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the view code. So the first thing is, if I delete, right, if I select an entry on the list box, I have some entry that, I want to delete this one. I want to make sure that I click delete. It gets deleted from the list box. It gets deleted from the worksheet. Okay, so that's important. That's the effect that we want. So to do that, we are going to use the list index. Okay, the list index is the same list index that I've covered on the combo box. Okay, so if you have been watching all my videos, which I hope you have, right? So list index, we have declared it. Okay, list index. Now if I message box the list index in the delete button, now when I run the code, okay, if I select the 0, okay, I select the first one, what do you think we're going to get when we hit delete? We're going to get 0 because the first entry is 0. The second entry is 1. So the list index, like the combo box, the first entry starts from 0. And what we'll be doing is we'll be mapping this list index value to the worksheet. So if the first entry in the list index is list box is 0, and the first entry here is 6, so the difference is 6 minus 0. Okay, right? So the difference is 6. So the first entry on the list box is 0. The second entry is number 1. The second entry here is number 7. 7 minus 1 is 6. So we are looking at a difference of 6. That is the mapping difference. Okay, that is the mapping difference. Okay, so I hope you understand what I'm talking about, right? So now what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to say we're going to account for if user did not select anything. The user did not select anything. Then when they try to delete, we don't want to be like, well, it has to alert that, okay, there's nothing been selected, right? So I'm going to say me dot listbox, me as in like the form that we are in, okay, the form that we are in, because we're going to use IntelliSense. And I'm going to say me, basically the list form dot listbox dot list index, okay, that's the me, equals to -1. Then message box, you have not selected anything to delete. Okay, so I'm just showing you the general approach as to how you can modify your codes, add the kind of alerts that you want, right? This is something. And then the second one is, I want to say, I'm going to end the if first, okay, before I move to the second one. Okay. The second one is, I want to say, right, I don't want them to not to delete header, right? We don't want them to be able to delete the header, obviously. So I'm going to say if me dot listbox1 dot list index equals to 0, because the first entry is 0. The first entry in the list box is 0, and that's the header, right? Then I'm going to say message box, you cannot delete the header, and we're going to make it an emphasis there, right, to let them know, well, no way, right? No way, mate. Okay, that's not acceptable, right? So we're going to say and if, but we also want to exit the sub. So as soon as this message box appears, we're going to exit the sub. So when you delete, if this message box appears, then we exit the sub. It doesn't move on to the next lines, and etc. Okay, so the same thing we're going to do here. Exit sub. Okay, so we've sorted out for the deletion and not selecting anything. Now what we're going to do is we're going to carry out the real deleting. Okay, the real deleting, right? So what we're deleting is from range A to 6, right? So A is basically A to E. So A6 to E6, but we can't delete A because that's the header. So we might delete A7 to E7. So it's a continuous range. Remember, I've already gone through the lecture on referencing continuous range. Okay, so basically it's something like A7, right? A7. And then are we going to have the comma or not for a continuous range? We're going to have the comma is not part of the expression. Remember that, yeah? The comma is not part of the expression. I've already explained this in detail, right? In the referencing continuous range versus non-continuous. So this is non-continuous. A7, E7. See? The comma for non-continuous is part of the expression, right? That's why the comma here is not part of the expression. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to concatenate it now. So I'm going to say sheet 1 dot range, and I've also gone through how to delete rows in the range, right? You can watch the video as well, all right? Deleting rows. Okay, basically I've forgotten the full name, but it's something to do with the deleting rows. Okay, and I'm going to say sheet A, range A, and list index. We're going to concatenate with the list index, and then this index, what's the mapping value? Plus 6, right? So 0 corresponds to 6. That's what we're deleting on the Excel table worksheet. Okay, and then I'm going to say E and list index plus 6 dot rows, not entire rows. Okay, we're just deleting the rows in the range. Okay, so if you're not sure about this, go back to the deleting rows video and make sure you understand what I've explained there, right? Okay, so this pretty much sums up the deletion. Okay, so basically I've selected 0, it's going to plus 6, and then it's going to delete the rows on the Excel table. Now if I run, I'm just going to try to delete Sunshine. Haley Martinez is out. Haley Martinez is out. Okay, so 27, that's the message box of the list index. Okay, don't worry about that. And then Haley Martinez will be out. So if I go, yep, Haley Martinez is no longer there. Okay, so where did we get the message box? The number 27 was this one, the list index. So I'm gonna comment that as well. I'm gonna comment that, but we don't need that. Okay, so we have pretty much done. I'm going to try to delete one more, right? Lucas Wright. We have a lot of rows to delete, so we can just try to delete another one. Okay, so we have deleted Lucas Wright. Lucas Wright is out of it. Okay, so we know it's working. So now we've done the delete. Let's go to the edit. What's the edit going to do? It's going to trigger the second form, transfer the value from the list box to the second user form, right? So it's going to trigger. It's going to basically first is going to unload itself, but prior to that, it's going to transfer the value onto the second user form, okay, and trigger the second user form. So looks a little bit complicated, which I wouldn't deny, but it's very manageable. Okay, so we already have named the controls on our edit button, so I know what it is, right? So list index, that's the first thing I'm going to do. It goes to me dot list box dot list index. Okay, so that's it. We can't use the list index because the list index for the delete is different from the list index from the edit, right? So when you delete something, you might first delete and then you might not edit, right? So that's why you need to have another list index for the edit, right, to account for the edit. Okay, and I have to do the two same handling here, right? I don't want them to be able to edit something on the column header, and if they have nothing to edit, then I want to let them know that, right? So that's why we can just copy this, and I'm going to say you have not, instead of selecting anything to delete, I'm going to say you have not selected anything to edit. You cannot edit the header, so we don't allow them to edit the header, and we exit this out. So we have completed that part. Okay, then what's the next thing? I'm going to transfer the value to the second form. Okay, I'm going to transfer it to update. Where's the first field of the text box? My date, if you remember, right? And it's IntelliSense is giving that to us. Okay, so I'm transferring to my date. What are we transferring? Okay, the value on the left is assigned to by the value on the right. Okay, so we're assigning the value from the table worksheet, but we are using the list index mapping. Okay, so we're going to say A and list index, right? Whatever that I've selected, plus 6 dot value. Okay, and then update dot my second one was product, right? If I remember, I don't have the best memory in the world, so I apologize if I'm not missing it out, but I believe it was product. So Control B, and then I'm just going to do B because we want to save some time. And you have to be careful though, right? When you copy paste, right? It's so easy to get into it. Third one was, I think, my store, right? You have the my product, then you have the store, right? Then the salesperson, and then the total sales, right? The 5. Control C, Control V, and this one goes to C. Okay, all right. List index, and we're adding 6 because we are mapping the list index to the worksheet. Then after store, it was the salesperson. Okay, so I'm going to copy, Control C, Control V, D dot value, and then update dot my sales, right? That's a sales value, right? It was a sales value. So we have named the text box that way. So make sure you're very, very careful. Okay. Now we have transferred the value to the second sheet. So after I've transferred the value to the second sheet, you must remember that, okay, the list index has been registered in the edit button, right? The list index has been registered in the edit button, right? Based on what the user selected. Now we're going to unload We're going to unload this form. And then we are going to call upon the second form. Update. What was the second form? Update.show, right? That was the second form. So we're calling upon the second form. And now we're going to come to the second form. So we've completed the first form. So I'm going to just, I'm not going to test it now, never mind. Okay, so I'm just going to check one last time. Okay, so when I go to the second form, I want to do something with the update button, right? So I'm going to look for the update button on the update thing, right? Update, what are we updating actually? We are updating the value in the table, right? So sheet 1 range A, and that's why I say the list index should be public. Should be public dot value equals to me, and what are we assigning the value to? The value that we've amended on the field, right? That was the text box my date, sheet 2 dot range D, and list index plus 6 dot value equals to me dot my product sheet 2 dot range C, and list index plus 6 dot value equals to me dot product was my, then the store name, right? Was the store name. Remember that. Okay. Hope I'm right. And then sheet 2 dot range D, and list index plus 6 dot value equals to me. Then the store was a salesperson, right? My person. And then sheet 2 dot range E, and list index plus 6 dot value equals to me dot my sales, right? As in like the total sales, right? So my date, product, store, my person, my sales. Okay. Now one thing I want to point out before we test the code is that I want to tell you that the list index has been registered. The value has been registered here. Okay, so it's a public variable available throughout this whole entire workbook. Okay, we have declared it public list index here. Okay, now when I go to the edit, this is something important for you to know. Although the form I have, so prior to clicking the edit button, I have selected make the selection. So the list index value has been assigned to the value that I have selected. Then I unload the form. So although I've unloaded the form, the memory is retained in the VBA. Okay, the list index value is retained in the memory. That's why when I go to my update, I could still use the list index value here. Okay, so you need to know when you unload the form, the value is not cleared from the memory. Whatever value that you have prior to, whatever value that you have after the unloading, whatever they've assigned prior to the unloading, that value retains in memory. Okay, so that's just how VBA works. Now we're gonna test the form. Okay, so I have the first one. I just go and try to select the first one. I'm not allowed to edit the header. I can't delete the header either. Okay, so and then I'm going to run the form again, and nothing this time. I try to select. We have not selected anything to edit. Now I'm going to select the first one. Okay, Greenleaf Market, Emily Johnson. Okay, the lucky first. Edit Greenleaf Market. Okay, you see the date now is it's returning. It's giving the date in the US format, but we have the date in the UK format. So there's a fix to it. I'll explain to you. So we have all the particulars. So I'm just going to do some adjustment. Widget AA, variable not defined, because I have put this as sheet 2. So it should be sheet 1. Okay. So all this has to be sheet 1. Okay. I have no idea why did I put it as sheet 2. That's why it should be sheet 1. Okay, that's why you have to test your code. Right, run it again. Okay, I'm going to close this form, and then I'm going to go and run it here. Now, Emily Johnson. I'm selecting Emily Johnson. Okay, we can fix this. I'm just going to add widget AA. Print div market, Emily Johnson, total sales 25. Update widget AA. But you see the value now is returning 627. It's giving the US date format. Okay, but I want the UK date format, whatever format that I have in my regional settings. So for that, you just have a very simple fix. Just do C date. Okay, just do C date. Me.my date. Okay, and then I'm going to close the form and we're going to run the form. Okay, now edit the 627 now, right? I update, it's returning back the format in the regional settings. See, so if I add AAA, see, value is updated dynamically. Okay, so this value, the total sales, I think you have to just do the reformatting again. Okay, or you can do the formatting in VBA, right? So it doesn't matter. Okay, so if I run again, the second one, 25, update, right? Then I just change to 30. Okay, so if, I've gone through one of the sections on user form, right, to how to format everything, right? Format and delete currency, right? You can do that. Okay, so that's about it for this box, and I think we are pretty much done with the user form section, one of the bigger chunk of Visual Basic application, right? And we are also almost approaching the end of the course. So for those of you who have been hanging, right, good job. We are almost there. The next section we'll be going through functions. I'll see you then. Take care, guys.